Hola y bienvenidos a esta presentación de mandatos de vosotros. Es el plural familiar en España. Recuerdan que solo en España usan la forma de vosotros cuando ellos hablan a un grupo de personas que usualmente ellos usan tú para una persona, pero en este grupo van a usar vosotros. No se usa vosotros en México, en Latinoamérica, ¿ok? Entonces, solo en España es plural familiar. Tenemos dos metas de esta lección. Metas se dice goals. So we only have two. Very first one is to form the Vosotros commands. We're going to talk about how we form affirmative commands, negative commands, and reflexives. They're going to be a little bit different for Vosotros. And then we will also, I provide you with some practice slides as well, so you can practice right there at the same time that you're learning the formation. Okay, aquí vamos. Let's first of all talk about affirmative commands. Remember, affirmative commands are when we tell someone to do something. So, for affirmative vosotros commands, we're actually going to use the infinitive. We start off with the infinitive. So whatever your infinitive is, go there. So let's just start with hablar, okay? And then what we want to do is chop off the R. So it's going to go away, and we will replace it with a D, okay? It is that straightforward. So every infinitive, go to the infinitive, change the R to a D, and you have the vosotros command. So hablar, if you want to tell someone to have something with tener, just be tened. You don't have to worry about stem changing verbs. You don't have to worry about irregular verbs. It's just the infinitive with the D. Yes, it's that straightforward. Don't overthink it. Okay, so let's practice that. Pruébalo, se dice, you try it. Okay, so I've got 6 of them here. And pause the video, take a moment, and go to the infinitive, and then replace, instead of writing an R, write a D. And remember, with pronouns, you will still attach because these are affirmative commands. So pause the video and write down these 6 commands. Okay, so let's check your answers. So number 1, you should have had comed for eat. Study, we would have estudiar. We want to command in vosotros, estudiad. Go. Id, really, it really is. You just change the R to a D, I promise. Order is pedir, hopefully you remember it as pedir. So that is pedid. Notice how the stress is on that last syllable because it ends in a D. Remember, any other consonants on the last syllable. So when we go to order it, pedidlo, the stress is still there because it ends in an O. So we don't even need to write an accent mark here. Tell him, decidle. Remember that decir takes an indirect object pronoun. Whatever we tell is the direct. We're telling it to him. So make sure you have le there and not lo. Again, don't need an accent mark because the natural stress is already there. All right, so pretty straightforward, right? Not too complicated. All right, so let's talk about reflexive. So let's say we want to tell these panda, bear, raccoon thingies to sit down, okay? So we're going to have to use the reflexive verb sentarse, right? We'll still use the reflexive pronoun, which will be os in that case, because again, we're talking to these panda, bear, raccoon thingies in Spain, so then therefore we would address them, with vosotros. So we will still attach it to the end, okay? So we're going to go to our infinitive, sentad. We're going to attach os, sentados. However, there's a but there, and that is we drop the D for reflexives before attaching. So we actually can't have that D there. So we chop that off before we add the os, and so we end up with centaus is how we form that. They're going to sound very strange to you. That's because we're not used to listening to the vosotros. This is not something you hear me say in class. So yeah, and some people even say it sounds a little Japanese. So centaus is what it sounds like, okay? So let's try another one. We've got these girls here. They have a slumber party. They're not sleeping. They need to fall asleep. And dormirse is the verb for to fall asleep. Dormir is to sleep. The act of falling asleep is dormirse. So we're going to take dormir and we're going to change it to dormid, right? Okay? And we would attach our os, but that's not correct. Because what I want to do is I want to get rid of that D. So dormios. Now you'll notice here that I've had to accent on the I. And that's because an I and an O together would combine to make one syllable, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put the accent mark on the I. Now, I've got kind of a hack here to kind of help you keep this straight for reflexives. Basically, for reflexives, here's the rule you can learn. First of all, learn the rules that are there. Add the O's, but drop the D. And then as far as accent marks are concerned, don't worry about AR and ER verbs, but IR verbs will need that accent mark. So if you want to put that in your notes, accent, IR, reflexives, okay, after dropping the D, that would be helpful. And that way I don't have to launch into a huge explanation of strong vowels and weak vowels and diphthongs and all that good stuff. Maybe some other day, okay, but not in this lesson. So for right now, just focus on IR verbs that are reflexive. Chop off the D like you would any other reflexive verb, but accent that I. Okay, so that's how reflexives works. Now, what good is any rule without an exception? So there is an exception, and that is the verb irse is an exception to the reflexive. It does not chop off its D. It says, no quites la D. So they said, don't chop off the D. So you wouldn't end up with ios. Even the Spaniards think that sounds weird. So actually, if you want to tell somebody to leave, to get out, to go away, you would just say idos. So that's your exception. Remember that ear had an exception in the nosotros commands as well. So you're going to kind of have to be on your toes with ear whenever working with mandatos. Okay, that's our only exception to that rule. Just one little exception. Okay, all right. So really, I just want you to take a minute. I think I have 5 of these where they are all reflexive. Okay, so remember, you'll be attaching os to every single one of these and chopping off that D, and then you'll have to decide if it's an IR verb, put an accent mark on it. If it's an AR verb or an ER verb, then do not. Okay, so take a moment. All right, so let's check your answers. Number 1, have fun. Hopefully you remember that divertirse is to have fun. So if I were to tell y'all to have fun in Spain, I would say divertíos. It's an IR verb, so we accented it. Take a bath is bañarse, so we'd say bañaos. One of my favorite ones. I think that sounds funny. Brush your teeth is cepillarse, so we chop off the R, change it to a D. I do that in my mind anyway and chop it off again. Okay, that's an extra step. But anyway, you get cepillaos los dientes. These are crazy, aren't they? To get dressed, you have 2 choices here. You could use vestirse, which is the one that you see on the left, so that'd be vestidos. Or you could use ponerse la ropa, and that would be poneos la ropa. Notice here you have an ER verb on the right-hand side, an IR verb on the left, so you can kind of see side by side that one needs an accent mark and the other one does not. So really it's up to you. Vestirse is to get dressed, ponerse la ropa is to get dressed. It's totally your choice, whichever one you want to do. Then there's the verb wake up. I hope you remembered it was despertarse. We're kind of getting those reflexive verbs mixed up, but it is despertarse, so I would say despertaos for y'all get up, is what a mother in Spain would tell her children. Okay, so that's how reflexive verbs work. So to kind of recap, we want to attach the attach the O's, chop off the D, accent the I if it's an IR verb. Okay, our exception to any of those rules is irse. You just keep the D and it's idos. Okay, so it kind of recaps that. So let's jump into negatives now. So negatives are no plus the subjunctive vosotros form. So this might remind you of 2 commands, where 2 commands had 2 different forms for affirmative and negative. Okay, affirmative had one different form, and then the negatives went back to the subjunctive. So vosotros is the same way. If it's negative, you're going to jump to the subjunctive vosotros form. So for those of you who might be feeling a little iffy about what the vosotros looks like in the subjunctive, it's just that opposite vowel with an accent mark on it. So it's going to be either AIS for AR verbs, or ER and IR verbs are going to be AIS. Okay, so that's all you have to remember there. So let's say we have a sign here, and we're going to say don't walk, and we're talking to you all. That's the verb caminar. So now we kind of got to think opposite vowel rules, and so that'd be no caminéis. All right, here we got a bunch of people, they're tired, and we want to say don't fall asleep. This is what it's like to teach on a Monday morning for me. So if I would say don't fall asleep, and I would say it to all of you, and I was standing in Spain, remember dormirse is our reflexive verb, so that would be no os dormáis. All right, now remember that reflexives or any kind of pronoun do not get attached to the end of a verb in any of the commands. Doesn't matter who you're talking to. You never attach with a negative. Okay, we've talked about that several times. So why is that you there? IR verbs do stem change outside of the boot in the subjunctive. So IR verbs, that's why that O is changed to a U. So no os dormáis. If that's feeling a little weak to you, those rules, you might want to go back to your lessons. I believe they're still available for you here on sophia.org. So go back to those lessons from last year about the subjunctive and take a few minutes to review one of those videos and kind of catch yourself up on the rules of those subjunctives. Okay? So negatives, no plus the subjunctive vosotros of the form. Okay? of the verb, sorry. So, pruébalo se dice give it a try yourself. So these are all going to be negative commands. Not all of them are reflexive, okay? Number 2 is reflexive. Number 5 is reflexive. Number 5 is olvidarse. I don't know if you remember that or not. So these are going to be all negative. So take a moment and do those 5. All right, so when you come back, it says don't go. Number 1 would be no vayáis. Okay, remember subjunctive is vaya, so there's the vosotros form. Don't go away, just make it reflexive. No os vayáis, no attaching because it's negative. Don't eat now would be no comáis ahora. So there's your subjunctive form of the verb, opposite vowel. Don't drive fast. Remember, you go to yo conduzco, so to get to the vosotros, we no conduzcáis rápido. And then don't forget the Google form would be no os olvidéis. Olvidarse se dice to forget. No os olvidéis el formulario de Google. And if you didn't know how to say Google form in Spanish, that's okay. Completely forgivable. All right, so olvidarse is a verb that you kind of want to add to your vocabulary, though. Okay? All right, so that concludes the lesson for vosotros commands. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it into that Google form. Okay? Adios.